Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Today, I'm here with Christi Christie, and I will allow them to introduce themselves in just a minute. But today, we're going to have a conversation about infertility in the Black community. And as you can see, there are three Black women here present today, and all of us have dealt with infertility in some way or another. So I will start with you, Christy Gaskin, since you're at the top.
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Christi Gaskins, and the story of my journey is that I have struggled with infertility and still do. And it has been a difficult journey and a journey of faith, I would say, as well, because it definitely challenges you and it angers you and it makes you question your life, your purpose. It makes you almost hate your body because your body is not doing what you think, based on societal standards that it should be doing. And so I've had to learn to love myself and to love my body, even if it wasn't performing in the way that I expected it to, and then learn to really trust God in that faith journey. And it was a difficult journey with many different infertility practices. We did Clomid, the pills. We did super ovulation, which is not fun. It's definitely brutal on the body. And then we did the IVF cycle, which was expensive because it was not covered by our insurance. And so the journey was definitely very difficult, very daunting. And, as a person of faith, I know that at the end of the day, you can do all of these things, but God has the final say, whether it be yay or nay. So you could pay $15 for IVF, $15,000 for IVF, and it still not work out. And the doctor that we went to, he don't do refunds. And he don't do retries. I know some doctors, if it doesn't go right the first time, they'll let you try. You get a certain amount of tries. He's not. No, there's no 3 tries for this amount of money. It's you pay this money, it works or it doesn't work. And if you have to try again, you don't have to pay the 15,000 again, but you'll have to pay, 2,000 here and there for every additional try you want to do. So it can become expensive. And so during my journey, I felt very much alone, because I didn't know anyone personally that went through that experience. And a lot of loved ones, from a good heart and coming from a good place, would give advice that wasn't necessarily helpful. I've had people say, well, you should just adopt. Maybe it wasn't in God's will for you to have a child, and for me, a person of faith, when God promises me something, I'm going to hold him to that promise, period. So I don't care if it takes 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. God, I'm going to keep reminding you every day, hey, you promised me that I would be a mother for my own body. So let's get going. What's going on? So, holding on to your own belief is definitely difficult when you're going through anything, not even just infertility, because you'll have other people's opinions, and other people's experiences that they try to place upon you, their own fears, their own insecurities, their own anxieties about things that they would interact with life. And then so they put it on you, like, well, if it was me, this is what I would do, type thing. And so dealing with that, dealing with people giving unsolicited sexual advice, maybe you should try this position, or maybe y'all should do it on these days, very daunting. Like, please stop. I've even had people offer to be a surrogate, and I'm like, that's weird. No, thank you. And so in my mind, it's like they had already resolved that your womb is broken. Like you're not woman enough, or I don't trust God enough on your behalf. So here are your other options, so it's hard to keep the faith when everyone around you is telling you, something different, and, putting that bug in your ear. So it made me feel even more insecure, and it made me feel even more alone. And so I searched YouTube, and I'm like, well, let me see other people who've gone through, this and everything. And I found not one. No, maybe one. Actually, I found only one out of maybe the hundreds of pages that I looked at. I found only one woman of color who spoke about her infertility journey, and she didn't really post much, like she only had like 1 or 2 videos on her page, so it wasn't really helpful. So I was watching all of these white people and their journey and everything, and I'm like, man, so is it not normal for Black people to go through this? Like, is something wrong with me even more? And so it wasn't until after, sometime after, that I noticed that more and more Black celebrities, more and more Black people are going through this through conversations that I'm having. But there's a stigma in the community that we don't talk about those things. We don't talk about infertility. We don't talk about our weaknesses. We don't go get help. We don't seek counseling. Like there's a stigma that all of these things mean that you are weak and that you are lacking. Mm-hmm. And so we don't discuss it, and so that broke my heart, because I knew that, then I started to meet other women who went through it and were alone and were crying and were, broken, and, just praying for them and trying to encourage them. I'm like, there has to be more. And that's where Christi came in. So I'll let Christi tell her story.
Yes. And so just like Christi said, it was, a journey that you just felt so lonely on. And so for me, I was on more of the other end of the spectrum, where it was easy for me to get pregnant, but to maintain a pregnancy was, proving difficult. My first loss was at 24 weeks. And, it seemed to be fine, but ended up having a stillbirth, baby girl. And then the next pregnancy, got pregnant almost immediately. And that was one of those things. It was kind of, trying to decide, like, should we even try, to get pregnant again, dealing with such pain and trauma from the loss. And, also thinking, well, maybe if we have a baby now, after, so soon after having the loss, then maybe it'll help us, to really deal with the trauma of that loss. And so we ended up getting pregnant again. And the same thing, ended up losing our son at 27 weeks. This time, perfect pregnancy, absolutely nothing wrong with him. And then ended up having to have an emergency C-section for other reasons, and then lost him after a few hours. And so, like Christi said, it was a very, very lonely journey, and just looking to see, where can I go to find information, and to find my community, like, who are the people dealing with this? And most of the people that I saw were not Black. And even the ones that I did see, people who talked about their child loss, it was mainly miscarriages. And I'm like, well, what about the people who've had stillbirths? I'm sure there are people out there, especially that look like us. But like Christi said, it was so taboo in the community, like people just do not talk about it. And so that's where we decided to kind of join after we got through kind of the darkness of our, our experiences. We were just like, how can we bring light to this situation? How can we help other women who have experienced infertility, who have experienced child loss, and show them that there is a community of women that are out here, and that, we can rely on each other, we can support one another, and we can, provide other information to even our family members, friends who don't know how to deal with us, once we have experienced that, because there's a lot of unhelpful information, unhelpful advice, that you receive from people who've never experienced it, and stuff. And, of course they're well-meaning, but, at the same time, it's just like, okay, there's an appropriate way to approach this. So how can we help others and, really build community around these issues?
Wow, that's wonderful. And both of you guys, the stories are so completely different, but that is how infertility works. Everybody's story is different. Me dealing with secondary infertility, you, Christi, dealing with, not being able to get pregnant and having to do in vitro, and then you, Christi, having to suffer losses, and not just a loss, but to birth two stillborn, well, not two stillborn, but to have two babies that then go on and pass away. So infertility is not just, oh, I can't get pregnant. It could be you're having recurring miscarriages. It could be that you're suffering losses. It could be that you can't get pregnant at all. It just does not look the same for anyone. So everybody's journey is different. But what I found, the same thing was true for me throughout my journey. When I was looking on YouTube and I was looking at blogs, I didn't see anybody that looked like me saying anything about infertility. And my friends didn't know how to handle it because they didn't deal with it. And my mother, she actually had a loss before she had me, and then found out that she had an incompetent cervix. So, you know, it was kind of always in the back of my head that something could possibly happen because something had happened with her. But again, it's not something that we talk about in the family, or it's not something that people discuss. So when you get married and you are in, you know, long-term relationships, you just expect to, okay, we're going to be in this relationship, we're going to have sex, we're going to have baby, period, point blank. And when that doesn't happen, you are faced with all of these issues. So I'll start with you, Christi Gaskins. When you first started dealing with your journey, and you were talking to your friends and family, were you open with it, or did you kind of try to hide it because you felt ashamed? How did you navigate that?
At first, I would say it took us probably about maybe a year and a half of trying to realize something was going on, and and to start the process. And so at first, I was private about it, because that's what we're taught. Don't tell don't, because we had just got married. And so all the advice from the elders was like, don't tell your business, whatever, keep everything that goes on in your marriage private. So we did keep it to ourselves and kind of like struggled alone. And there may have been, one or two friends who knew, the full story. And when I did kind of open up, maybe around like year 3 of our struggle, I noticed that all advice isn't good advice. And so I kind of backtracked and stopped sharing with certain people, my journey. So I kind of really kept the circle small to like only 2 people knew what was going on from me, other than my mother. I tell my mama everything, but other than that, only 2 people knew what was going on, because I trusted that they could be, and Christi being one of them, that they could be a real sound support system who will pray with me, who I'll be like, hey, I'm going on a fast, truly believing in this, and would join me in that fast, and in that prayer. And so, yeah, a lot of it was, I would say a lot of it was shame, because when you can't, people don't know what to say. So when you can't, have children, people are like, and so my thing is, I don't ever, and that's my personality across the board. I don't like when people look at me in pity. I go through what I go through, and I'm a strong person and I can usually handle it. But what I can't handle is when people pity me, and look at me like, man, I'm glad I'm not you, whatever the case may be.
Right.
So, or tiptoe around me. Like if you're pregnant and you're happy, share that. Don't tiptoe around me, because that'll make me feel like you think I'm inferior. You think something's wrong with me because, you're able to get pregnant easily, whatever have you. Now, there are some people who it does trigger them. So I'm not knocking those people, but I'm not one of them. And my friends know that I'm not one of those people. Like I definitely will celebrate with you through your triumphs and be there for you, during your hardest times. And so a lot of me wanting to be private was because I didn't want those looks of pity. And I didn't want that unsolicited advice, and to protect my husband, because, it's not just my story.
Right.
And so I'm not going to go out and just start blabbing everything that I'm going through, knowing that he's going through it too. So if people are looking at me like, oh, what's wrong with Christi? There could be people looking at him like, oh, what's wrong with Christi's husband? And so I didn't want to, paint him in a light that would make him feel uncomfortable, talking about it. So, and before we started the whole Christi thing, it definitely was something Christi and I did, was discuss it with our husbands. Yeah. What are you guys comfortable with us sharing? What are you not comfortable, etc. And so, we're glad that they were both on board and, wanted us to share whatever it took to help other women. But there are some aspects of their story that we don't share because out of respect for them. And so, that was a lot of the reasoning for my silence and me just kind of keeping stuff to myself.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about you, Christy? Were you more silent after suffering your losses, or did you share what was happening with maybe some of your friends that may not have known, or some of your family members that may not have seen you, or even known that you were pregnant? How did you handle it?
Yeah, so mine was different because, we waited the standard, first trimester before we told anyone, other than those like extremely close to us, like my parents, or, both of our parents and close friends, like Christy and everything. And so ours was, more out there, publicized, if you will. And so it wasn't an easy way, to experience a loss, because it was, so many people. For both of them, we were in the process of planning our baby showers. People knew to expect, the invitations. They were, forthcoming, and, all those sorts of things. And even, Chrissy was planning both of the baby showers, for our daughter and for our son. And so, it wasn't anything that was, that we could really keep a secret. It's kind of like, if we didn't tell people, they would be like, well, what happened? Where's the baby shower? What's going on? And stuff like that. And so, we did have to let people know. I personally did not, I don't think I personally told anybody. It was, my husband who really dealt with all of that to let them know, hey, we're going to the hospital. This is what's happening, and, keeping people updated. And so it was, it was definitely difficult because, you are expecting this big celebration, but instead for both of our children, we ended up having to plan funerals, and so it was, very, very difficult. I was, extremely ashamed. And it did cause me to withdraw within myself. And so a lot of relationships that, even if I was talking to you on a daily basis, weekly basis, whatever, like those things essentially stopped. And so it was just like, if you weren't in my face, like if you weren't literally in my face, like in my house, I wasn't talking to you. And that went for my parents, my mom, who I speak to almost every single day. I wasn't talking to her. And so it was, very, very difficult, just to navigate, how to get beyond this loss, how to, still maintain relationships even with that. And so, of course, the people who were there for me in my corner, being my support system, and, really making sure that I was okay, those relationships are very much intact and stuff. And so, but, the ones that, unfortunately, some fall by the wayside, with that and stuff, because you can't give of yourself when you are, in a place of just really despair and depression and stuff. And so some people don't understand that. And, unfortunately, that's just the way it is. But yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that you brought up the topic of depression, because while going through my journey, I don't think I realized that I was depressed. Like, it never dawned on me that I was depressed and that I was dealing with this situation by withdrawing from people and really just not even trying to deal with the emotions that I was feeling. And after it was all over and I started to go back through some of those journals that I had written, or looking at poetry that I had written, and I was reading it and I was like, wow, this is really dark. Like, how was I in this place? And I didn't know, or how was I even able to come out of this place in the first place? So I want to kind of talk to you guys about your journey. Do you feel like you were at a place of being depressed? And if so, what did you do to be able to get you out? So either one of you can jump in.
Christy, I'll let you go first.
Yes. Yes, I was absolutely depressed. And it wasn't a question about it. Like I knew I was depressed. And one of the main things that allowed me to know that I was depressed is the fact that I had absolutely no zeal for life. Like I didn't care about anything. I didn't care about, all of the hopes and dreams and ambitions, everything that I cared about, anything that I was passionate about. I just did not care anymore. There were many days that it was extremely hard for me to even get out of the bed, especially after the second loss. After the first loss, it was, like, okay, this happened. I'm gonna, God has, was giving me strength to get through this, and I can do it. And so, I tried to push past it. I, went to counseling because I was crying all the time. And so, this is something that we've discussed on our channel as well, that, I got to the point that I was just crying so much that I was like, it can't remain like this. And so I went to counseling. And so that was very helpful for me. But after my second loss, it was just like, there's no way I can recover from this. I stopped going to counseling because I was like, what is she going to say to help me? What is she going to say at this point? It happened a second time, and most people were just like, even the doctors were just like, oh, this will never happen again. And so it was just like, it wasn't the same exact circumstance, but it happened again, And so after that, I was just like, God has forsaken me. He doesn't care about me, no matter what I did, no matter what I prayed, no matter how hard I fasted, no matter what I did, God, completely forgot about me and stuff. And so it was a very difficult journey. And so actually back, like after my first loss, that's when I started journaling a lot of my thoughts, a lot of, just everything that I was going through, everything that I was thinking. And that just continued. Like I just continued to write everything down because I was like, I need an outlet. I have to get this out. And I didn't want to burden my husband. I knew that he was grieving as well, for the losses. And so I was just like, and, like I said, there was no counselor that I thought could help me at that point. So I was just like, somebody has to hear this, I just have to get it out. And so that's what I did. And I, continued to journal throughout the entire experience. And then I guess my awakening moment was just, I was so deep in depression that I started to feel like, this can't be life. This isn't me. This isn't, I'm always a very happy, joyous, upbeat, person. And I was just like, I cannot live like this. And so my husband and I, we ended up going to the church for their New Year's Eve service, and every single thing that the preacher said, it was like, almost as if God was talking directly to us. Like, okay, you haven't been listening to the signs. You haven't been listening to me for the last few months. Like I wasn't even going to church. I wasn't praying. Like everything that I relied on before regarding my faith just did not happen in those several months before that. And so, once I went to this church service, it was just like a way that God opened up my heart back to him and, really listening to him. And so between the journal and getting back to my faith, that was how I got out of, my pit and everything. And that's essentially my book.
Yeah.
So after, and I ended up turning my journal into a book. And so, hoping to help other women who have, struggled with, struggled with, some of the same things that I have, or even, like we said, to help family members and friends, whoever, so they can kind of get an understanding of what's happening. And so, yeah, that was my experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would say for me, I definitely, it kind of fluctuated between depression, insecurity, anger, resentment, a lot of those things. And the I guess not really unique, but the bad thing about it was monthly. So every month, that I wasn't pregnant, that my cycle showed up, then, would be just the most depressing, 4 days of my life, and I also suffered from uterine fibroids at the time. So my cycles were excruciating. I mean, bad, like pass out, vomiting for 7 hours straight. Like it was to the point where I started to have anxiety before my cycle came, because I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do this, and I considered getting a hysterectomy, because I'm like, well, Lord, if you're not going to do this for me, then I give up, because I can't go through this pain every single month. And so like I would tell my boss, like, hey, my cycle's supposed to come on Thursday, so I'm probably not gonna be at work. Like I knew that I'm done. If it comes that day, that was it. And so with that excruciating pain, I felt like I was being punished. And so it made me feel insecure, because I'm like, well, God, I'm doing everything. I'm praying, I'm fasting, I'm reading your word, I'm doing all of this stuff. I'm a good person, And so it's just like, what did I do? What is it that, so you try to find places to attribute blame, or what is my husband doing? Because we connected. Is he messing up? Because, like, let me go get on him, so it's like, you try to rationalize why this is happening to you. And I think a lot of people do that when they're dealing with difficult situations. And so you think introspectively, what did I do wrong? What did I do to deserve this? What's wrong with me? And then if you go down the list and you're like, well, it's not me, so it must be somebody else. It must be something else. And so I definitely was depressed. I definitely found myself crying on my closet floor many nights, my husband sleep, not knowing anything, because like Christi, I'm known as the strong, happy-go-lucky, like, oh, Christi's here, type person. And so I felt like when I went out into the world to work, to church, whatever, I had to put on that mask. But when I was alone by myself, it was a completely different story. It would, I would sometimes even be triggered by watching movies of women who've gotten pregnant, and I'd be like, God, why can't that happen to me? I'd find myself driving home from work, just listening to music and just break down crying, and, never really understanding that was depression, but I knew it was sadness, and I knew it was a longing, but I definitely felt like I was broken, and I definitely felt like, my body was worthless, because while I was going through what I was going through, because I care so much about other people, when I'd be like, all right, well, my cycle came, I'm not pregnant again, my husband would go through his own, depression in a sense, like, I'll never forget the time that I saw him cry, because it was kind of like the last straw for him. Like, it was like, he was broken and his faith was wavering, and so that broke me, because then I'm like, not only am I disappointing myself, I'm disappointing my husband. And so I took on that burden, of, the responsibility of what was going on with my body that I had no control over. But for some reason, I felt like it was my fault. So I need to own it. And so it was hard. It was hard, and to go through that every month for 6 years, it was hard. I would say the only times that I didn't, because my husband's in the military, so the only times that I probably didn't affect me as much were the times when he was gone. Because obviously, if he's gone for 6 months, I can't get pregnant, So right. It's not something that I would focus on in the times that he was gone. So I could, pour my focus on going back to school or work or whatever the case may be. But, obviously, when he was home and we were actively trying and it wasn't working, we were praying together. Everything. We were committed to getting this baby here, and every month, getting that stab in the gut. So I would say definitely it was a depressing, situation, and it definitely challenged and tested our faith. Definitely. And how we got through it, how I got through it, how he got through it is I got pregnant eventually through IVF, and then it was over. But, for me, I had to come to a realization, long before that, all right, Lord, I know what you promised me. And, learning that, God's timing is not our timing. So just because God tells you something in 2008 doesn't mean it's going to happen in 2008. It could be, 2028, and you'll be like, Lord, why? And it happened even in the Bible. And that's what I took solace in, like finding. But even though I was like, dear Lord, I understand what you did for Abraham and Sarah, but I am not trying to wait 25 years to have a baby. Like, that's not what we're trying to do right now, Lord. Yeah. So, so it's like I took solace in knowing that God does show up and he is a promise keeper. And so regardless of what the world is saying and people are saying, and regardless of what my body is trying, is saying or doing, I know that God can do the impossible and God can work miracles. And so I'm going to rest in that fact and, and choose to believe no matter what I see. Because it's very difficult, and it's not something that you can do overnight. It's definitely something that I worked on every single day, to not focus on what I see, but to believe on what God told me will be, and to be fully invested and buy into that promise and into that hope that it doesn't matter what anyone says. It doesn't matter what the doctor says. God said, I'm going to have this child. So I'm going to have this child, period. And hopefully not 20 years from now, that was the main thing, like the timing, like, Lord, please. Yes. So, and so that's what kind of helped me to kind of like focus my mind. And so anytime I would go to that dark place, and anytime I would be, in that headspace, I automatically shifted, and it got to the point where it was almost immediate, like immediately rebuke that thought, move on. And you don't dwell on it, move on. So anytime my wheels started turning, like, okay, this is what's wrong with me. It's my husband's fault. Just look at him. It's probably, like, because he eat all that junk food, like it was, any negative thought that tried to like creep in, I immediately, brought it into subjection. No, we're not going there. We're going to go focus on something else, put on some worship music or go for a walk or, whatever have you, go work on the YouTube channel, whatever have you. Like, I was immediately just shift the focus to something that was positive and something that was productive for me, because it wasn't productive to wallow and to try to place blame and to just be in that, negative headspace. So it was something that I literally had to work on moment by moment. It was not something, because a lot of people think that I am how I am, and it's just like, oh, Christi was born a happy, positive kid. Like, it takes work, and it takes emotional and mental maturity. Because if you're not, and spiritual maturity, if you're not a mature person, it'll be difficult for you to see a situation but see the big picture. And so not be fazed by this small phase in your life, but see, like, what is God trying to do here? Or how can I make this situation benefit me and glorify God? Mm-hmm. And so it's a constant, even now, it's a constant, habit that I have to build within myself so that I can maintain a focus and maintain a positive attitude, and bring about positive things in my life. Because, mind over matter, whatever you think and whatever you speak out of the abundance of your heart, you can manifest into your life. So I'm not trying to manifest negativity, and I'm not trying to manifest infertility, and I'm not trying to manifest things that don't benefit me. So that's what helped me kind of push myself out of that funk.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I think for me, it was more so because I already had my oldest daughter. And then at the time where we decided to start our IVF process, we had adopted 2 other children. So I'm looking at these kids who are looking at me, and I can't just be in the bed every time I get my cycle. I just can't completely fall apart every single month. Like, I've got to get myself together. And I really just, like you said, started focusing on my faith. As a matter of fact, I completely tore down everything that I believed, went to the Bible, read it from front to back like twice, started studying Hebrew because I'm like, I need to figure this thing out. Why is this happening to me?
I need to learn a new language, Lord. Maybe I'm not reading it right.
Yes, I was like, maybe it was my ancestors. I don't know what happened. I don't know what y'all did, but I'm going back in my family line. I'm gonna figure out what's in your family line. We just gonna figure it all out. And I really just started focusing on shifting things and my beliefs about things, especially when it comes to pregnancy and fertility and looking at the Bible. We have all of these stories, and yet and still we're kind of, I don't know, it's like we kind of try to block out Abraham and Sarah. We don't want to think about, Rebecca. We don't want to realize that Rachel has some problems. Like, we don't think about these things. We just kind of expect everything to be easy and never to have to struggle or have any problems. And everybody has something. But for us, it happened to be infertility. For other people, it could be money problems. It might be your marriage. Whatever it is, you're going to have some problems. And for me, it was really just being able to say, this is not my fault. Like, this is not my fault. I can't control it. I can't make a baby. I'm not the one that does it. And if he doesn't want me to have one for whatever reason, maybe it's just time for me to surrender and say, you know what? Okay. Maybe this is not the path, and maybe I need to focus on something else. And that's really what helped me, and to just be able to walk away from all of it and start supporting other people. So now that you guys are kind of listening and being given more stories from other women, what do you kind of see as patterns in some of these situations? Like, do you see that a lot of us are having to deal with a lot of the same emotions and a lot of the same problems and, comments from people? What are you guys seeing?
Yes, absolutely. It's like, although our experiences can be completely different, we suffer from the same emotions, some of the same issues, like just dealing with whatever it is, whether the infertility, whether the loss, it's pretty much the same. And so, a lot of people have told us that they're so grateful for our channel, for our platform, and the fact that we're so vocal about our journeys and everything that we've experienced, including the depression, including the, suicidal ideations, those sorts of things, and just being super transparent. Because, like we said, especially in our community, it's so taboo to talk about it. And so, a lot of people have been very, very supportive of it, just because they're like, I never thought I could talk about this. So thank you. Thank you for helping me really process and get through this and everything. And, as far as some of the issues we have seen, definitely the lack of good maternal health, doctors not listening, things like that. And so a lot of those are the same. And so that's why advocacy is one of our main focuses. Like, you have to advocate, you have to know how to advocate for yourself, and you have to advocate for yourself, because the doctors don't always listen, especially when it comes to Black women. And you can see that just from the statistics. Like, that's not something that we're just making up, based on the statistics. We are the ones who are often overlooked, when it comes to, like, just like with you, Sierra, the doctors were not listening, and who knows where you would have been, had you gotten the proper assistance that you needed and attention that you needed, prior to, finally finding that doctor that listened to you. And we shouldn't have to go through that. And so that's, one of the main things we're advocating, just trying to make sure that people understand that you have a voice and you need to use your voice. So.
And I would say, for me, one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of people don't know how to feel about what they may be going through. And so it kind of, discussing grief kind of helped them put a label on it, because, when people think of grief, they often think of, someone dying, but women who suffer from infertility grieve too, grieving an empty womb, grieving a child who never was. And so being able to discuss that, you are grieving and it's okay, and understanding that while all of our stories may be different, going through that grieving process to get to the other side is much the same. You go through the same steps, and, you deal with your emotions and you learn yourself, and, learning how to love yourself again, truly love yourself is another, theme that a lot of women going through this go through, because you hate your body. you know, whether it's been through miscarriage, you know, stillbirth, you always think something, I did something, you know, and like you said, Sierra, it's not your fault. And coming to that conclusion, you know, can look different for many women, but the process is much the same, you know, when you get to, and so that's what unites us, you know, in our journey and in this community, because although, you know, I may not know exactly what you went through, you know, I know that in getting to the other side of it, we're kind of all going through the same thing. You know, we're kind of all traveling in the same desert, you know, although our experiences in the desert may be different, you know. And so that's what it kind of enlightened me to. And just like Christy said, people have been reaching out. It's been a great outpouring of love and support, and people saying that they share our channel because, you know, my cousin, she's an OBGYN, and she says that she's had to, unfortunately, more times than she would have liked, you know, tell a woman, you know, I'm sorry, you know, there's no heartbeat, or I'm sorry, you know, you're going to have to deliver the stillborn baby, you know, or I'm sorry, your baby is not going to survive, you know. And so she said that she's even shared our channel with some of her, you know, patients and clients. And so it warms me and gives me a sense of peace knowing that, you know, what we went through was not for naught, you know? And so, and you mentioned the people in the Bible and how we forget. I can't think of one story of a person in the Bible that did not face adversity. So that there should show you that that's not something that God promises. Just because you're, you know, just because you're a follower of God and a child of God does not promise you, you know, sunshine and rainbows every day of your life. But, you know, one thing the people in the Bible did do was take that adversity and shift it into something that at the end of their story glorified God. And so that's the key that we often forget. Job didn't wallow in his losses. You know, Daniel didn't wallow in the lion's den. In fact, he praised God, even though he was surrounded by predators. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, in the midst of our trials and our tribulation, you know, it isn't meant for us to stay there. Just like there was another side to their story, there's another side to our story. And so it's helping women push past, you know, that grieving process to the other side. And so, and Christy and I talked about this, like, we don't want our channel to be so focused on the loss, you know, because we want people to know that there is another side to this. Right. And there's joy after child loss. There's joy after infertility, whether it be you were able to have a child or not, like you, Sierra, you know, and, you know, learning to accept what God allows, whatever that may be, and being at peace with it. And just like you, when you know, okay, maybe this is not the route, because I thought this was the plan that God had for me, but it's not. And so now I'm at peace with it, and I'm going to take it. I'm going to create this foundation so that I can help other people, you know, and that's where, you know, the God exception is, you know, in counseling. I did pastoral counseling. And so we are taught to teach a client to discover the God exception in their lives, to find where God was in every aspect of what they were going through, and how God revealed himself, even if it's not a way you expected it to. And so God revealed himself to me, in the fact that what I went through was not for no reason, you know, and now I'm able to take what I went through, and Christy's able to take what she went through and pour it out into someone else so that they don't have to feel alone, and they don't have to feel like they don't have the resources to process what it is that they're going through. And so that alone has been the rewarding part of the journey for me.
Yes, absolutely. Being able to now give back in a way to people that are going through something like this is, in a lot of ways, it was healing for me. Because, you know, when you're going through it, you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. But when you get there and you finally get to a good place of healing, and you decide to go back, it's just, you know, very empowering, and to be able to walk other people through their struggles, and to be there to be like, yeah, I've been there. Yeah, I felt that. Yeah, but it's okay. You'll get to the other side yourself, and your journey may not look like mine, and it may not look like Christy, but your journey will end up where it ends up, and hopefully your story turns out to be something beautiful on the other side. And if you need support, you've got us.
Yes.
All three of us are here
Yes.
to support you. So please feel free to reach out to us. If you have any questions, you can reach out to Christi Christie, their YouTube channel. I will post underneath this video. And is there another way that people can contact you if they have questions?
We're also on Instagram, Christi Christie _. And it's Christy with the I first, and then Christy with the E second. So her name first, my name second. And we also have a private Facebook page for women, and it's private, and so we have to approve everybody who requests to join it, so that women have a safe space to share their anxieties, their insecurities, whatever it is that they want to share. If they have questions, there are no stupid questions. There is no expiration date on grief. So if you just need a little extra support, that's what we're there for in that private group. It is searchable also on Facebook. And if you want to join it, well, make sure you're a woman, because for some reason lately we've had a lot of men requesting, and I'm like,
Yes.
So if you're a woman going through infertility, we got you. And so and we'll give you all the links to everything so that you'll have it.
Okay. Thank you, definitely. And I will put all of those links underneath this video once they send them to me. And I'm also doing a support group every last Wednesday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you guys want to ever join that, you guys are more than welcome to join as well. So if you need support, we're here. And I hope that you enjoyed this conversation. If there's ever a time that you guys want to come back, maybe we can talk about, more in depth about healing, or, whatever it is. But I really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you so much for being with me today.
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Thanks, guys, for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.